In all honesty, I think our life was unsustainable in America, and this pandemic is the worst thing in our lifetime, and that includes Dax Shepard's podcast. And but it is the worst thing in our lifetime. And what was going on before that was unsustainable. The way we treated each other, the way we spent our time, not just our money, but our time. And I don't know if this country is capable of learning from history. I don't think they allow us. I think there's a system in place where we learn these lessons, and then, somebody like Obama puts the thumb on the scale and gives the nomination to Bernie and
to Biden.
To Biden, yes, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to this country. I don't think we're capable of changing. We're not allowed to change, is what I think.
Well, there's going to be some change. The question is like, what is it going to be? We could come out of this where there's, this is an exaggeration, 5 companies that function, and there'll be a smattering of small businesses that come back.
Look at Latin America. We're going to be living in. Everybody thinks we're Western Europe. We keep looking to Western Europe, Hitler and Mussolini. Look at Pinochet. Look at Brazil in the 70s. That's the future. Banana republic, income inequality, police state. Try the veal.
Just
try the veal, everybody. But that's what that's where I see this country. If we're not already there, I don't know. I think that if 80% of this country can't cough up $1,000 for an emergency right now, you've got, do you know that 1/5 of this country has a healthy metabolism? 1/5. 4/5 of this country is pre-diabetic, either obese, has hypertension, but we identify, somehow we think we're part of some empire, and we're on the receiving end of all the bounty. They've brainwashed into thinking we're part of this. We're not. And I don't know. I don't think we're allowed to change.
Well, I got to tell you, David, it sounds like you're doing great there.
Well, you wanted me radicalized.
Your support of Joe Biden has really, really done a number on you.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to start being the Joe Biden supporter anymore. I'm going to come on here and just tell you what I really think, because I've been, yeah. It's laid bare now. It just doesn't pretend. This is why I stopped doing. You remember me when I used to be the fake conservative.
Yes, I do.
And I stopped doing it because it stopped being funny. It stopped being fun. I was doing it during, in the lead up to the first Iraq war.
I do remember this actually very vividly in the early 90s, 91, 92.
Yeah. And then when I saw that we were invading Iraq the first time, I thought, F satire, F irony. Some people are taking this seriously. I don't like the audience's response. Things are, and I stopped doing that fake conservative, because it's just, I don't think it moves the needle at all. I think it reinforces what people already think.
But do you think that's the case? I mean, I guess maybe I saw you in the basement in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I think everybody got that it was satire for the most part.
Yeah, but that was my abattoir. And
right.
People were bleeding in that bit. Yeah. I don't think satire, I think if you look at A Modest Proposal, Jonathan Swift, Eat the Irish Babies, after that, there was more famine in Ireland. It wasn't as though Jonathan Swift taught Great Britain a lesson and they started caring about the Irish. The war in Iraq continued,
right,
with Jon Stewart and Bill Maher clenching their. So I'm not so sure satire is as valuable as just saying what you really mean. Like I kind of like right now, I was going to come on and pretend to be a Joe Biden supporter and do what I did before. It's not funny to be that asshole. right?
I don't know. I found it funny, but this is another look from you. I mean, I get what you're saying. That I'm not convinced, but I'm also not convinced that either thing works. That you can measure the efficacy of either. I mean, look, I left comedy largely for that. At least in part for that reason. That I just did not feel comfortable, particularly during the Bush years. I just did not feel comfortable, sort of. Jumping over some of the specifics, I guess it were, to land the joke.
Right.
Like I got too caught up in the specifics and I was like, except for, and then I would describe away the joke.
By the way, this is a real moment. This is an actual real moment because we're
going to limit it.
Okay. But I prepared I'm voting, I'm a Bernie bro guy and I had all this stuff prepared.
All right, well, maybe we'll do that later in the week.
But you know what the thing about comedy is? It's the audiences and I'm being serious, they ruin good comedy. Good comedy, and you see this, you see television laid bare, you see the writing laid bare without the audiences, and you see some people still catering to these rubes. I mean, you're coming to New York City. It's a cultural mecca. And you come to a television, how smart can you possibly be if you're coming to see a television show? Why would you cater to people in a studio audience? They're not the brightest people in the world. So the comedy without an audience and still writing to the rubes who you see in front of you, as opposed to the millions of people at home who are watching, who are much smarter than a studio audience, that's why comedy tends to be so bad. And especially, I mean, there's some great practitioners of stand-up, but when you're constantly catering to people who come to a comedy club, those aren't necessarily the brightest people in the world. So the audience ruins good comedy. That's why I think you stop doing it, because you can't really, I would travel around the country and go, I know people are smarter than this, than what I'm seeing in front of me. They're just not coming out to a comedy club.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I certainly developed my comedy within a school that had a significant disdain for comedy clubs and comedy as an institution. I mean, that's what we were doing, cross comedy up in Boston. It was all sort of anti-comedy on some level. And there's an argument too that like just the mass adoption of television is what made television so bad in terms of the content. But yes, I would agree with this, but I also think that,
where's the critical thinking? I mean, I talk to my kids. Every television show is fantastic. Every movie is fantastic. There's so little critical thinking. They turned us and certainly our kids into consumers who just think if it's on TV or if it's in a movie theater, it must be great. And that's what we'll talk about at dinner. What's in your Netflix queue? What are you watching on Hulu? And then you wonder how somebody like Donald Trump seizes power and we can't get rid of him. We need to turn this crap off. And I'm not being, watch stuff like watch the Majority Report or
watch this segment over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for the large part, obviously the people who are watching it are watching this, and I don't know. I mean, $1 billion, like sports get $60 billion a year in revenue for sports, where you watch these guys hit a baseball and we're paying them all this money. And for what? I mean, I think we have to reevaluate. I don't know if we can. I don't know if we're allowed to. Well, we're allowed to, but I don't know if people are really that psyched to do it. And I don't know. I have gotten less concerned, maybe because I'm not in show business, and it's, even further in my rearview mirror about assessing or judging it, because I don't have to participate in it. Like, I don't really watch that much. I'm not subjected to it. when I, 20 years ago, to do bad comedy was an immoral abomination to me. It was like, I had to have, when I would do sitcom work, it was only as part of a larger plan to, make my own material that I thought was better and not necessarily commercial. And that was the only way I could justify it to myself. Either that or just imagine sitting in a bar in Worcester saying to a guy like, I don't want to get, paid $40,000 a week for this show because I think it's like not funny. And then just imagine what kind of beating I would have taken, like in the face from that person. But I think there's a role for satire. I guess this is I remember having conversations like this with Barry Crimmins and in that context, in Boston years and years ago. And I had other comedians who would say like, you went up there for 10 minutes. You didn't say a single joke. And I'm like, well, I know, but this shit with that first Iraq war was very troubling to me. And I was like, I'm not going to spend the 10 minutes I have on that stage telling jokes about my grandma when this is all fucked up and nobody's talking about it in the news. But I think everybody has a role within that concentric circle, right? And so that ranges from, I don't know who you want to put into the middle of that circle, and maybe there isn't actually one middle, but maybe it's an activist, maybe it's an academic, maybe it's a writer, and communicating that message to to broader and broader segments of the population. And the idea is, find the place in that series of concentric circles where you are most comfortable and your skill set aligns the best to expand that ripple, and know that ripple diminishes the further it gets out. But if you can maintain the ripple and expand it as much as you can, you find your location on those concentric circles, and then you park there and hopefully, don't think too much about what's happening with the other parts of the circle. You get too sad.